podcast, to Cordia podcast today. And thank you so much for joining. It's amazing that we could make it today and have this conversation about a very important topic which is related to everyone's health, and that is diet. So welcome, Suzy and Majken.
Thank you.
Thank you, and thank you for hosting this podcast.
Yeah. I would like to start from a very basic question, and I know you are experts in your area. The very basic question is, what is definition of balanced diet? How do you define balanced diet, Suzy? And I can start with you.
Well, a balanced diet is a diet that includes everything. So you mustn't be afraid of eating a particular kind of food. It's only a matter of always thinking about amounts and context and frequency. Yeah. So of course there are some foods we would like people to eat more of because they are healthy, and this is foods like vegetables, healthy proteins, some starch, and some healthy fat.
Yes. So and from you, Majken, I would like to hear what is the importance of eating such balanced diet which Suzy just defined.
Well, what you need to think about is that you have to give your body what it needs to function. So there are certain minerals, vitamins that the body needs just to function. Also, you need to give your body enough energy so that you can have a nice energized day. And also, as Suzy says, there's also something about amounts. So you need to give your body just enough to have it functioning, but not too much, because you need to be within a certain weight range that is most healthy for your body.
Yeah.
And also, it's important that you build meals that are satisfying and filling.
Yes.
So if you do that, you'll eat mostly natural foods and you'll eat less processed food. So there's, like, we can say, a range of, it's good to aim for 80 or 90% of natural real foods, whole foods, and maybe 10 to 20% of the ultra processed food or sweets.
Yeah, but that makes me curious about processed food. How would you define processed food? In today's world, it's difficult because a lot of things come in package. Packaged food is very common. So can you just put some words to it, that how can people make the right choices and decisions about the food?
Yeah, well, if you look at fast food, they are nearly always ultra processed, and they taste really good because the people who make them, they make them taste good. So it's very easy for us to overeat these kinds of foods. So you can definitely buy things in a bag that is not highly processed. So it's a matter of looking at it and also seeing, is there a really high content of calories in there? It's probably also ultra processed.
So you would suggest to keep things like very common things which are processed, like chips or biscuits, cookies, etc., to the minimum, to that 10% limit that you
10-20%, yes.
Okay.
But it's also cakes and sweets and ice cream and stuff like that.
Wow. Yeah, very nice to know that.
Breakfast.
Thank you so much.
A lot of breakfast that's really processed.
Yes.
Your cereal in the morning.
Yes.
There's so many options, and some of them are more processed than others.
Yes, and that's true. And that is where, because a lot of these processed food is also sold in as if they were healthy food. So it's very difficult to make that decision. But it's good to know that how someone can be more conscious about it by looking at the ingredients and the content in the package when we are buying. Thank you. So this was some general definition of balanced diet, but I would like to understand something specific to Indian context here. And I come from India, so I know that Indian food consists mainly of the staple diet has roti, that is bread, flat bread, rice, dal, which is lentils, and sabzi, which is some green vegetable or some vegetable, often with potatoes as well in it. So this is kind of usual. This is how Indian food looks like. The plate looks like. What would you say about that? What are your thoughts about that, Suzy? And then we can come to Majken about her perspective.
Well, everything you mentioned is actually carbohydrates, and a lot of it is starch. And we don't have to be afraid of starch. But there's a good... we use handfuls to kind of plate up. So if I take a plate here, when you use the Sense model, which we will talk about a bit later, but we can just set it into context now because it's easier to understand. So vegetables, they're always healthy. And when we build a healthy meal, a satisfying meal, we always use 1 to 2 handfuls of vegetables. So if you imagine a plate, you will always go for like at least 1 to 2 handfuls of vegetables. And we will also go for 1 handful of protein. So this is actually an example of protein. So this is chickpeas and an egg, a small egg. So this is a good handful for me. And I can, that's what I learned using this for many years, that this is an amount that will suit me. So now we come to what you're talking about, handful number 4, and that's the starch. So this is the potatoes. So this would be maybe a handful for me, maybe like this. I have to work my way around to feel how satisfied am I after a meal. So this is the starch part. So this is rice and bread and potatoes, and actually they should fill around 1/4 of this plate.
Okay.
So that's actually the answer to your question. That all the foods you were talking about, around 1 handful or 1/4 of the plate. And then we have to make room for vegetables, 1 to 2 handfuls. And then the really important thing is the protein. So it could be a chicken breast, it could be other kinds of legumes like beans, it could be cheese with a low fat count in. So this is one of the most important handfuls to make a fulfilling meal that can last in the stomach for like 4, 5, 6 hours before you need the next meal.
Yeah, but that's very nice to know. So what I understand is that what my plate consists of today has a lot of carbohydrates in it, and I need to cut down on some of the carbohydrates and limit the carbohydrates to 1/4.
Yes.
And then have place for proteins and vegetables, as you say.
Yeah.
Okay, that's very good to know, Suzy. Thank you so much. Majken, why would you think, why is it important? Because that is a very standard diet that we all take. In India, it's very common to eat this diet. What is missing there? And as Suzy mentioned, why is it important for the body?
Can I have the plate again?
Yes, you can.
Actually, it's for the exact same reason that Suzy just gave, that if we imagine that this plate only consisted of maybe more of the potatoes, a little bit of vegetables, all of this, the protein, they are missing. We use proteins not only to keep us full, that's a really good reason to eat proteins, but also to build muscles. So we need to have proteins in our diet. Also, if this part of the plate is limited and it's more potatoes, there's a lot of good of vitamins in this part of the diet. So in order to have a balanced, healthy diet, we need food from all of these groups in a balanced way.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then on top of that, of healthy fat, little bit of healthy fat, as you mentioned,
Yes,
for the
that's true.
satiety of it, right?
It's for the satiety, and it's also to give the body the possibility to take in all the vitamins that are soluble in fat. Yeah.
And also taste-wise.
Yes.
If we don't add fat to this plate, it will taste plain.
Yes.
You know. But there's another reason also for the proteins here. It's you mentioned it. It's to keep the satiety for a long, long time. If we exchange this with bread, the calorie count will add up really, really quickly. So we have a tendency, if we eat a lot of naan bread, then the calorie amount will really rise, and we don't get the same satiety as if we would put like a quarter of protein in the meal. So that's also to control the calorie balance in the meal. Is really a good way to build a meal, like with 1 to 2 handfuls of vegetables, 1 handful of protein, and 1 handful of starch, and then of course some healthy fat.
Yeah, thank you so much. Thanks a lot. And because we are talking about fat, my next question is related to fat. Actually, sometimes when we are cooking food, we are using different sorts of oils. Sometimes it's mustard oil, which is cold pressed. But I feel that traditionally we used to cook much more in mustard oil and cold pressed oils, which were fresh and healthier. But now we are moving a lot towards refined oils, packaged oils, big packages of pre-processed refined oil. So what I want you to talk a little bit about is good fat versus bad fat, because as you said, of course fat increases the taste of it, and that's why all fried food, it tastes so good. But it is also a bit unfortunate because it's not always good, and that I'll ask you and talk to you about, Majken. But Suzy, if you can just start out by your definition of good fat versus bad fat, what would you recommend to the audience here?
Well, I've always used this easy way of thinking about it. It's everything that grows up from the ground. It's the healthy fat. So that also, like nuts and avocado, olive oil or olives, it gives olive oil. And go for the not processed oils. Go for the not frying oils from a big can. I know it's probably more cheap, but health-wise it's a good way to go for the a bit more expensive. But then let's take an example. If you measure how much oil you buy in 1 month, if you can halve that, then it might not be a increase, difference in how much you pay for it. So that's a way of doing maybe half the oil, maybe 1/4 of the oil.
Yeah.
So that could go away. But also, if you eat fats from everything that has eyes, like cow, or it's what we in Denmark, we try to minimize this because we want to give room for the vegetable kinds of fat. So
plant-based,
like the nuts and seeds and stuff.
Yes. And I think you put to a very important point here about measuring what is your monthly purchase, because that's a very good indicator of what are you consuming in a month. And if you are conscious about how many liters of oil you are consuming in a month, then as a family you will also make the choices, first of all, to minimize that intake of oil, but also move towards healthy oil if possible, right? So but that's a very important point.
And also, if you use the oil for frying, don't use it multiple times, because it will turn into trans fat, and that's what we want to avoid in a health perspective.
Yes. So how many times do you think, like if we used oil once for frying, is it something that becomes unhealthy right there? Like trans fat, does it become trans fat right there? Or
it depends on how long you fry for and which temperature. So if you do it at a medium temperature, it won't form immediately. They'll be forming a bit. So it's more about not using it like multiple times, like 3, 4, 5 times. Use it a couple of times, that's fine.
Still okay, better than using it 10 times.
Yes.
Yes, I agree. But Majken, just the question over to you about the role of oil, the good oil or good fat for the body, and also the harm or the damage bad oils can do on the body, if you can put some words to it.
Sure. So the big difference, as Suzy says, between oil based from plants or oil based from animals is that the plant-based oils, they have more unsaturated fat. And actually we know from studies that unsaturated fats can prevent or even reduce the risk of cardiovascular disease. So we want to build in these good omegas in our diet. So they can actually be beneficial for you. The fats that derive from animals, they are more likely to be saturated, and that can lead to higher cholesterol levels and actually do the complete opposite and increase the risk for cardiovascular disease. But again, it's also about amount. It's not like, oh, just eat a lot of vegetable oils and you'll keep yourself protected. No, then it will have the opposite effect, because then you'll get a lot of calories, you'll be overweight, and that also increases the risk for all kinds of lifestyle diseases. So yes, it's about balance again. But if it's the choice right now and then of the same amount of vegetable oil or animal-based oil, choose the vegetable one.
Yeah. Thank you so much for bringing that to perspective, because I think oil consumption and how it affects weight or cardiovascular diseases and so on, that's an understanding that we also want to be developed over time gradually, because sometimes it's seen as a hidden ingredient which is quite seen as innocent, not harming, but it does harm. So I'm coming to rice, basmati rice, which is very popular in India, or any white rice versus brown rice. I have read a lot of articles which tell that they are equally good or equally bad. But what is your point of view on that, on rice?
Yeah, so if we return to our plate here, if I remove the potatoes here, and now I put rice in here instead, like a handful of cooked rice here. So actually, if we look at it nutritionally, if you use white rice or brown rice, there's not a huge big difference. So in my perspective, when people want to change their habits, they also have to eat what they like. So if they like the white rice, okay, then choose it. But there will be a slightly more fiber, slightly more satiety in the brown rice compared to the white rice, because the shell around the rice is still available here, so you give the body more. You can also, it takes longer to cook, because you have to be able to eat it.
Yes.
So you kind of can imagine that you put more in your body by choosing the brown rice.
Yes.
But nutrition-wise, there's not a big difference. There's not a big difference in calories. So it's up to people to choose what they like to eat, but always think about the amount.
Yeah. Thank you so much. Yes. Majken, how does rice, or how does this principle, having this amount of rice in daily diet, how does it affect diabetic people? Because I'm thinking of, are potatoes less harmful than rice, or is wheat bread, chapatis or rotis that we call in India, are they less harmful than rice if taken in the same amount? How do you see that?
I think I would say the same as Suzy on this. You should eat what you like, but it's about balance and amounts. So you can, as a diabetic patient, eat all of the mentioned food items, but you need to eat it at the right amount. But if you choose the bread, it will give you less satiety, and that can make you hungry earlier, and then you would eat a bigger amount of food during the day. So that's what you need to take into account. But there's another part about what can maybe, if you like brown rice as much as you like white rice, then you could think about choosing the brown rice also because of the fiber parts, and because we actually know that studies show that fibers can protect you from getting cancer in your colon. And so that's like that would be a good reason to
Yeah.
choose the brown rice over the white
Yes.
ones.
Yes. Yes, Suzy.
But if you look at again the 4 handfuls of food, if you do this as a diabetic person, you will ensure that you give your blood sugar really good terms, because the vegetables here, yes, that's carbohydrates, but there's not a lot of it. It's also a lot of water in here, so it's good if you need to get your water content up in your food, and it's filling.
Yes.
The proteins over here, they're actually, if you look at blood sugar rise, the proteins will take it down.
Yeah.
And if you are conscious about your amounts of carbohydrates in the starch over here, rice, bread, potatoes, corn, the amount over here will not be able to go to rise the blood sugar as much because of the proteins and then because of fat. So if you introduce like 1 to 3 tablespoons of fat in this meal, it will also, the fats and the protein will keep the blood sugar down. So in combination here, this is a really good, fulfilling meal for all people, but especially also for people who have type 2 diabetes.
And I so much like that you started out with the most important ingredient of the plate, that is the vegetables part, and then the protein part, because that is also a mindset in India. When I think of food, and many like me who think of food, they are always starting with the carbohydrates. So the carbohydrates becomes the main item, you can say, like roti or rice, and then you, after you've decided that, you think of what can I eat that with. So you make the accessory food, like afterwards, and you think of it afterwards. While as the way you described, think of the vegetables first, think of the protein first, and then the carbohydrate as well, this much, and then if you have achieved satiety with all of this, you have a balanced diet automatically. So thank you so much for that, Suzy. Yes, now I'm coming to the sense principle that you both are advocates of, and Suzy, you have worked quite a lot intensively on the sense principles. Can you define the sense principle for the audience for diet? And if you can put some words to it, and also why do you believe in it?
Yeah, well, when I made up the Sense diet, it was because I had an issue myself. I wanted to go down in weight and wanted to be able to control my portion sizes. And so I read about the literature of weight loss, and how do I make up a plate that will keep me full for a long time, but it also gives all the nutrition, all the value of nutrition is high, and I don't come in any kind of need for anything. So I looked at the recommendation we have in Denmark from the authorities, and that's actually what I used to build up my plate. And after doing this for years, I kind of suddenly saw, okay, that's 1 to 2 handfuls, that's 1 handful. So there was a pattern. And so it was actually the literature and the authorities in Denmark was pushed over in this plate here.
Yeah.
So that's why I believe in it. Not only because I felt good eating it and I saw results. At that time I lost 40 kilos.
Wow.
And all the health issues I had, they kind of disappeared. So I knew, okay, this is a good way to go. But also mentally, when you use this Sense diet, you also have to think about, when am I hungry and when am I full? So this is an exercise, like I build a meal and then I kind of see, okay, how did that go? Maybe I need a bit more protein or a bit less carbohydrates to feel the best I can. So it's also individually how people they respond to this.
Yeah.
You can if you remove the starch part, well, you remove some fullness. So then you can introduce some more vegetables or some more proteins. That's also a way to go. a more low carb action. Yeah. So here I go like this every day. I say, am I hungry now? No. Okay, then I'll just wait a bit.
Yes.
Am I hungry now? Yes. Okay, then I plate up and I eat. And then I close my mental meal box and then I wait until I feel hungry again. So this is an exercise of feeling hungry and feeling full, and all the time trying to relate to what is my need, what is my personal need.
Yes.
So all of this is actually also backed up by literature. So it's evidence-based, but I just took the evidence and put it into handfuls.
Yeah, and that's really great and really handy, I would say, the handfuls. Because then you don't have to bring a weighing machine all the time and weigh your food, which is often very difficult, especially when you have to weigh the ingredients in some of the traditional diet planning concepts. So I feel that this is very intuitive as such. But does the word sense, does it come from common sense?
Yes, it does.
Okay.
It does. And I would also say that for some people, like 2 plates of this a day is enough. So if you can use this principle 2 times, like for lunch and dinner, then you can maybe start the day in another way. It's okay to do.
Yes.
So, but at least go for 2 of these meals a day. And also, if you want to say, okay, I don't want the proteins today, then what is left? Okay, there's vegetables, and then I go double the amount of the starch, because there are also proteins in like rice or bread. So you can use your common sense and work a bit around the handful.
Yeah. So if you are going to have a cheat day, you can manage it in that way. If you have to have something which is high in carbohydrates, then you just replace it with something else.
Yes.
Yeah.
Or you just look at one meal and think, okay, I eat like this twice a day, and the third meal I kind of divide that into 2, maybe a piece of cake and then an omelette or something like that. So you can also look at this like 1, 2, 3 a day, and then you just shift around with your common sense.
Yes.
Yeah.
Wow, that is very nice to know, and I think, of course, it needs to be understood more. But the good thing is the flexibility that it allows, the whole principle. So that is very nice to know about. Majken, what do you think is good about the sense-based approach or the common sense-based approach? Because Suzy mentioned this handful principles and some research and evidences. Can you put some words to it? What kind of researches do we have in the area?
Well, actually, I want to also take kind of a practical approach.
Yes.
I have spoke to a lot of patients who suffers from overweight and has a really, really deep felt wish to lose weight. And they would often come to the doctor and ask, what can I do about it? Can you help me? And so many times I've been listening to myself saying, yes, you have to eat a healthy meal. Do you know how to build a healthy meal? And the patient would typically respond, yes, I know how to do that. That's no problem. I'll just go home and implement that. And then later on they come back and we talk about, okay, I did not lose any weight. Why not? How did you build your meals? And then quite often they did not know really how to build a healthy meal. We have official guidelines from the authorities on what is a healthy meal, but these guidelines, they are so non-practical that it's really impossible that when you sit at the table and you have your plate in front of you and you have to put something on that plate, it's impossible to implement.
Yeah.
What Suzy did was make that connection. So you can take the really official guidelines, build on research, and then make it practical on the plate. So that's actually what I think is really genius about the sense principle, is that it takes something difficult and makes it practical for the individual.
Yes. I think that I totally agree to that. It is from abstract to concrete, transformations. That's very, very nice to know. What works best for the clients when they are using sense principles? Maybe Majken, you can take that question. Like when you are in contact with patients with overweight or diabetes, or there could be also not patients but clients who are pregnant, for example. What works best for them in this? What is their experience about sense principles?
Well, what we hear mostly is that you can eat a normal food. And that's actually the best part about it. It's not like you have to go out and buy something special or even implement it in a special way. It's normal food, you eat in a normal way. It's just about how you build your meals. That's the most important thing. Health-wise, we know that if you use the sense principles, you will, if you need to lose weight, you will lose weight if you use them. If you need to gain weight, you will gain weight if you use them. Also, at the same time, we can ensure that you get the nutrients that you need if you eat this balance like this. And we have a lot of studies that show from our own clients that the health parameters, they improve. Not only weight, could also be the blood sugar for diabetic patients, or even just feeling better about yourself mentally while using the principles.
Yeah, but also blood pressure and
Everything
cholesterol.
connected to lifestyle diseases. All parameters improve.
Wow, that's very nice to know, and very impressive as well, that how such a small shift in mindset and actions can make such a big difference. That's really impressive. So I understand that the good thing that your client experience as well is about that you provide them a framework rather than is very specific that you have to buy this and eat this and so on. It's more like a framework and an understanding of how to build your meal so that they are empowered and they do it and make the right choices.
True.
That's very nice. What can be a good diet for average adult in India? I'm thinking of Indian population, and that is Suzy for you. How do you make a good plate for Indian people? And I'm from North India, and the food is very different, and there is diversity, all of that. But just your inputs on that, and then we can see how we can use it in our respective diets.
Yes, so I have dived a bit into the Indian food culture, and there's a lot of starch, really. So it's a matter of really looking at the handfuls and starting out by looking at the vegetables and then the protein and then the starch. So if people can do that in all kinds of Indian dishes, they're set to go. So let's take a poha, a breakfast. So if you take some of the rice out and you introduce some more vegetables, and maybe if you put lentils or beans in there, that's it.
Wow, that's such a good idea.
So it's really just a matter of shifting a bit around.
Yes.
Yes, and then I have another example. I don't know how to pronounce it right, but the roti.
Roti, yeah?
Yes.
Chapatis also.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, if you take that with a vegetable dish, then you have the vegetables.
Yes.
And then you put in some kind of protein source like chicken or some cheese with low fat. What do you have in India with cheese with low fat?
It's cottage cheese. It's called paneer, for example.
Okay, you can put that in if it suits the dish.
Yes.
And then of course some fats, and then you're done.
Yes.
And the next one, biryani?
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 Yeah.
Yes. Here you can focusing on less rice, more vegetables, and add some proteins as chickens or legumes,
eggs or legumes.
And, and that's it.
Very
so it's
nice.
again shifting around and understanding where to start and where to end the meal, nutrition wise.
Yeah, but thank you so much, and thank you for doing the homework. I mean,
but
that's great.
But then also think about this with the 3 meals a day.
Yes.
And if you want something in between, like some kind of sweet treat or snack or something like that, you have to realize, okay, is there a budget for that, calorie-wise? Then you might have to go a bit down in size in 1 or 2 meals to make room for the small snacks. So there you have to again use your common sense and be alert all the time about the amounts.
Yeah.
But if you take a person that maybe needs to lose like 30 kilos, there will be some room here. So you don't have to do everything different than what you're used to. But always think about the small habits, and if you eat like this amount of snacks, go down to this amount. If you drink like 5 cups of chai tea with sugar and milk, then you can go down in, like, say, from 5 to 3 a day, or you can actually, if you want to, you can take out the sugar, and you can also use some artificial sugar. You will get the taste of the sweet, but you remove all the sugar that'll increase the blood sugar, and you'll get rid of all the calories. So there's also a matter of looking at your habits and seeing, can I go down in amount? Can I change something to lower calories, or can I go away from the habit?
And also what you just said, that small steps.
Yes.
Just do a little at a time. Do not try to change your whole diet at once. Then you will not have success. It takes a long time to change habits. And we know that if you start small, you have a greater chance of success.
Yeah, and that's such an important point as well, because how to be motivated in doing this and how to be more compliant with the framework. It has to have the needed flexibility to start with, otherwise it will become a barrier to accomplish. Just wanted to point out the fact about chai. I thought that chai is totally innocent. We don't need to count it in our diet plan. Do we need to?
Well, it's always a matter of amounts, if you like take 5 a day, and you put milk in how much milk is in there?
Usually chai is, we drink 1 cup of chai, and it will have around 100 milliliter of milk every cup.
So that's half a liter of milk
during the day. Yes.
And so that's around 300 calories in itself.
Mm.
So if I were to do that now, plus the sugar, that might be, let's say you get around
1 teaspoon sugar.
In 1 teaspoon sugar. Yeah. So that's like 450 calories. If I would take that from now and 1 year forward, just eating what I normally do, but I take in 5 chai, I would probably gain that's a lot of kilos. I would gain over the next year, maybe 20 kilos.
Okay. So it's not innocent. So we have to really watch how many cups we are taking chai, and if we can avoid the milk in it, like have green tea or something, that could also be an option, right?
It would be an option, but you have to ask yourself, what is realistic for me? Maybe it's better to go from 4 to 2. Because I want that, because I like the taste. Maybe it's avoiding the sugar. So you have different options, but you have to use your common sense and what you know about yourself to take the right decision for you.
And I didn't realize that 5 cups of chai will give around half a liter of milk as well. So that is
It's also why, think about when and why you drink the tea. What does it give to you? Is it actually because you're a bit hungry? Then maybe think about it's better to build a real meal instead of drinking that cup of tea. If it's because it's a social thing with friends, then maybe think about how can I compose this chai in another way that it doesn't count so much in my total calorie count for the day or something like that. So think about when is it that you want to drink this tea, and then also make your decision from that.
Very nice. Thank you so much. It's all about awareness and consciousness. I get it. Thank you. So vegetarian options. Actually, this question is relevant for a lot of my fellow Indians who are vegetarians, and a big percentage of the population is vegetarian in India. What would you suggest as protein options for vegetarian people? Because those who are non-vegetarian as well, they don't tend to eat meat every day. So meat is kind of taken also by non-vegetarians, let's say twice in a week, sometimes once in a week as well. What would you suggest for the other days?
So first of all, I would say that if you look at proteins, the most valuable proteins for us human beings are actually the proteins from the animals. So it's good to include some of this if you do it. So like chicken, but it can also be fish or prawns or stuff like
eggs.
And then we come to the eggs.
Okay.
And of course, some vegetarians eat eggs, some don't eat egg. But if you eat egg and you get some milk products or some cottage cheese, if you include that in a diet, you're all ready to go, because then you get all the nutrition you need. The problem actually first arises if you only eat like starchy food and legumes. That can set you a bit down in nutrition value. So you have to realize if you put in eggs or cottage cheese, that's a really good thing to do. So, but if you have to get an alternative, the vegetarian proteins, it is the legumes, the white, red, brown beans, lentils, chickpeas. That's the way to go.
Yeah. Thank you so much for that, because that's a good, very important aspect of diet, that most of the people eat vegetarian diet on a daily basis, and sometimes once in a week, as I said, they have a non-vegetarian diet. So the next question is around, we discussed about sugar and tea already, but one question to you, Majken. What is the role of sugar for average adults, I would ask, and in relation to a lot of people being pre-diabetic and not knowing that they are on the way of being diabetic? How can we adjust our lifestyle not to become diabetic? Because there is a huge percent of population again which is not diagnosed but is on the way to get diabetic.
Yeah. If we talk isolated about the sugar, then there's of course the direct sugar that you put inside your chai tea that you can be mindful about, but also I think that you need to be careful about the hidden sugar as well, because often there's a lot of sugar in processed food. So if you just look at the breakfast products, cakes or whatever that you consume during the day, all the snacking, that has a lot of hidden sugar. You need to be mindful about that, but also it's also to be mindful about fat actually, and especially the saturated fat, because that along with the sugar is what makes your risk for actually getting the diabetes bigger. So if you look at the guidelines from the Diabetic Association here in Denmark, they say eat less sugar, eat less fat, eat more basic foods like what we just were looking on at the plate, and eat more fibers. It's because it makes your whole gut system work better if you have fibers, and it reduces risk as well, also for having higher cholesterol levels. So it's not only about the sugar, it's about balance again, and reducing calorie intake.
But as you suggested, reducing direct and indirect sugar intake would definitely help pre-diabetics, and
for sure.
And along with being mindful about the fat as well. Yes. Thank you so much. So and that brings me to the next question, which we have addressed a bit, Suzy, already. That what is a good recommendation for diabetic patients in terms of sense principles? But you pointed out that the same principles would apply more or less, to be mindful about the content. Maybe again, as you said, the carbohydrates should be kept to a bit lower end for them.
One handful of starch for every meal. If you build like this, you're home safe. For the blood sugar. So, and you can even go more low carb if you want to, and remove the starch part and just top up the vegetables and a bit more protein. That's the low carb way, and that's fine for people to do that if they want to, but it's not necessary. They can actually introduce rice bread in like a quarter of amount of this plate.
Yeah, sure. Thank you so much.
And it also, if you're overweight and you're diabetic, if you just lose weight, this will also have this anti-inflammatory effect in the body. So you also have to be aware that if you eat like this much and you just turn it a bit down, that will also have an effect. But the really good way to improve the level of how the blood sugar reacts is to go for a meal in this composition.
Yes. And I think that will also make the intake predictable, so that the body is not having spikes of sugar, because that is that hurts most actually inside the body, on the organs and other systems. So I think it's very good to make it more predictable and controlled, instead of having too much food at once and then not having for a while and then again eating too much and so on. So but Majken, would you like to add to that a bit for the diabetic people?
I agree with Suzy that a really important part is that if you are overweight and you have type 2 diabetes, it's actually kind of the best thing you can do is to lose weight. Because the problem with type 2 diabetes is not that the body cannot produce insulin. Insulin is what we use to control our blood sugar in the body. But the problem is that the insulin does not really have effect out in the tissues. And we know that is directly linked to obesity. So when you get closer to a more normal weight, the insulin will start working again, and then the blood sugar will stabilize. So lose weight if you're overweight and have type 2 diabetes.
Yeah, thank you so much. And then I have one last question, and we'll start with Suzy. How much water intake would you recommend for people? Because water is an important part of diet or overall well-being, and a necessity, not only important. But a lot of times we undermine the importance because we are very busy, and even though it's warm, we just forget about drinking enough. What is your recommendation about that?
Well, drink if you're what's it called?
Thirsty?
Yeah, thirsty.
Yes.
That's actually a really good recommendation. But as you say, sometimes you can't really feel when thirsty. So if we just had a meal and there's like an hour later and you sit there and think, I need something, maybe that's thirst. So drink some water. Water is always the best to drink. And in Denmark we have a recommendation that is 1.5 liters of water every day, but that's in normal conditions. So in Denmark it's cooler than in India. So in India you should drink some more.
Yes, of course.
So,
it's quite warm in India these days, at least.
Yes.
Yeah.
But if you drink like 5 cups of tea in a day, that's also accountable in the amount. So that's good because you get some liquid. Yeah. But also what to think about is actually if you increase your vegetable intake and your fruit, because we haven't talked about fruit. So in the 1 to 2 handfuls of vegetables, you can also use 1 handful of fruit. So the water content in vegetables and fruit is high. So the more vegetables and fruit you eat during the day, the more water you also get. So that we have to also remember, that if you're not that thirsty, but if you're good at eating fruits like a watermelon, there's a lot of water in there. So that's also a good hint, that eat a lot of that, then you will get water content up in your body.
Yeah. Do you have any motivation techniques to make people drink more water, for example? If there is, consecutively, if we are forgetting about drinking, I'm the person, so if you can suggest me something, that would be really great.
Yeah, it's about habits. So it's about introducing something that is easy in your family to do. Like, is that to have bottles with water that is in the fridge and it's fresh and it's cold? Maybe put some lemon in there. If the family gets used to that, it's always the first thing we put on the table as a rule. Okay, remember that in the family. Then it's easier to reach out and drink the water. So it's actually about giving yourself the opportunity to drink it.
Yeah.
Also during the day at work, where is the water?
Yeah.
Is it available for me? Then it's probably the thing that I will go to and drink. So it's all about environment and setting up the environment to be a drink success of water.
Yeah, to remove all the barriers in between that someone has to go to the fridge and pour water, rather bring it to the table so that it is there when it is needed. Yeah.
It's the same on with all the sweets and the crisps and the chips.
Yeah.
Just the other way around. Don't buy it.
Yeah.
Don't have it in the cupboards. If you don't have it in the if you don't have it on the table, you have fruit instead on the table.
Yes.
That I see it with my children. That's what they eat because it's there.
That's true. And I mean, setting up the environment is something really important, and it's an important point of how do you set up the things in the kitchen as well, and what is more accessible and what is a bit far and hidden. So the candies in the top shelf and the healthy things in the bottom shelf would be helpful for the kids as well. But that's a very good point. Thank you so much for bringing it up as well. But
also, you have your own personal indicator of if you get enough to drink or not.
Yes.
Because just look in the toilet. Do you even go to the toilet? If you haven't been to the toilet all day long, probably you haven't had enough to drink. When you go there, I know it sounds funny maybe for some people, but take a look in the toilet. If the more concentrated, that means darker the urine is, that you need more fluid.
Yeah.
So that's also the
indicator
that your own body gives you that you can take a look at.
Yeah, but I totally agree, and I have heard this from some of the leading neuroscientists as well, that the whole system, the body and the mind system, it indicates, you can watch a lot of it in your urine. If the urine is dark color, then something is missing, something is not fulfilled, some requirement. And if it is transparent, and the more transparent, it is indicator for healthy healthfulness or healthy.
With some exceptions.
With some exceptions, of course. Yes, true. But that's a very good point and indicator as well. But I think these were the questions that I had, and I think we don't have the time right now in this podcast episode, but maybe we can do it again later on coming episodes, but about the cultural aspects of diet and how diet and culture are so related to each other. Because what I feel is that in the culture that we have developed, and I see that both in Denmark and India, that a lot of happiness is associated with sweets. A lot of well-wishing is associated with sweets. So when you visit people's home, or when you are going to congratulate someone or having an occasion to celebrate together, it's always accompanied with a lot of sweets, which creates this acceptance to the sweet, which creates this acceptance to the sweetness in diet, to the sweet amount of sweet ingredients in the diet as well over the time. So I think that is another topic that I would really like to talk to you about and brainstorm about, that how do we break that culture going forward, because why can't I come to your place with a packet of cucumbers and gronkål, or good cabbages and so on.
Let's make a small test, and for the next time we will all do that.
Exactly. And see if people are getting mad at us or getting happier. And I was also thinking that why can't we bring something which we create? If I have found out a very good healthy recipe for smoothies, I can come up with all the ingredients to someone, and then the person can just blend it and see how good it tastes and can try it out themselves. I can also write the recipe to them. That could be a good host gift, for the next time. But yeah, we'll experiment that and see how it works. Thank you so much for today, and thanks for answering all those questions, and thanks for your wonderful comments. And I hope it is helpful for the audience, and I hope it brings some value to our day-to-day habits and helps us and motivates us in the right direction. That's the minimum that I hope from this episode. So thank you so much, Suzy and Majken, for that.
And thank you, Khushboo, for having us here today.
Sure,
Yes, thank you.
Thanks a lot.